time for another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. This would be number 120 during the time of the pandemic, and I'm Michael James, your host for this morning's edition. I'm here with Emilio Davis in the wings. He's engineering, and today we are going to talk to a friend on the border about immigration policies and immigrants coming from Venezuela and being sent off in buses, not only by Governor Abbott, but now by the mayor of El Paso, Texas, although it seems to be a little more humane in the manner that they're doing it. We're also going to have a couple people talking to us about organic food movement, and we'll see how that all goes. A couple of good things. Well, one good thing this week, I had my class at DePaul. I have 29 students. It's called Activists and Activism. And this week we had a guest speaker, Billy Che, or Billy Lamar Brooks, who was the Minister of Education of the Black Panther Party. And I got to read the Black Panther Party 10-point program again, and I'm going to share it, not with all of the explanations in detail, but just the 10 points. So here goes. Number one, we want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our Black and oppressed communities. 2, we want full employment for our people. 3, we want an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our Black and oppressed communities. 4, we want decent housing fit for shelter of human beings. 5, we want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. 6, we want completely free health care for all Black and oppressed people. 7, we want an immediate end to police brutality and murder of Black people, other people of color, all oppressed people inside the United States. 8, we want an immediate end to all wars of aggression. 9, we want freedom for all Black and poor oppressed people now held in U.S. federal, state, county, city, and military prisons and jails. We want trials by jury of peers for all persons charged with so-called crimes under the laws of this country. And 10, we want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, peace, and people's community control of modern technology. Okay, I'm pretty much for all that still. That's from the late 60s. And they do have more content to it. I would say if you're interested and you really want to get it and apply it in your life, go to Google it. Wikipedia is where I took it from. Okay, on the voting front, we've been talking about it a lot. If you want to get involved, I would try to hook you up. You can, if you want to help turn out the vote in some place, particularly here in Illinois, in areas where we have some Supreme Court races, you can contact me at fatback@aol.com, and I will forward it to Katie Hogan, our co-host sometimes and producer, who is actively full tilt working on the coming election. On the health front, CDC Director Walensky reluctant to agree with Biden's "the pandemic over" remark. Biden did say the pandemic was over. He's taken some heat about it, but Walensky says we're in a very different place now. Bivalent COVID shots are critically important to moving forward. Long COVID is still a big issue. 23 million Americans still have neurological impairments and other disabilities, including seizures, blood clots, heart conditions, and brain fog, as well as, as a result of a prior COVID infection. People don't seem to be wearing masks as much, although sometimes I see them in abundance. I think what Biden probably meant was we've come a long way. Clearly, we have a long way to go. So take that, everybody. Be careful wherever you are, and know that we are still dealing with some challenges on the health front. On immigration, you've all heard about the governors of Florida, DeSantis, and the governor of Texas, Abbott, shipping people off to Martha's Vineyard and other cities. They're getting sued for shipping out immigrants to Martha's Vineyard with false promises of jobs and shelter. We're going to talk to Steve Yellen in a few minutes, and we'll hear what's going on then on the border in El Paso. On the labor front, Home Depot workers in Philadelphia have filed a petition with the Federal Labor Board to form what could be the first store-wide union at the world's largest home improvement retailer. Internationally, everywhere you've heard it, Trump, his children, and businesses are in the sights of the New York Attorney General Letitia James for fraud charges. On the sports front, the Bears were really embarrassed by the Packers. Lonzo Ball is getting a second knee surgery. The future is uncertain for the Bulls guard. And I got to say, been watching the White Sox closely all summer. I had high hopes, but they appear to have fallen from taking over the first place slot. I was at the game on Tuesday night, went into extra innings. We got beat. Wednesday night, they got beat. Thursday night, they got beat. All that was by the Cleveland Indians, who are now 5 or 6 games in front of us. Cleveland's a nice town too, but somehow we'll hope for a miracle. And the Cubs next year. Okay, little history. September 24th, 1789 was the day the Supreme Court was established with 6 justices who served until death or retirement. And back then, life expectancy wasn't much over 30 years old. It's ironic how much damage the Supreme Court has done and still has the potential to do in the coming years with its current right-wing extremist bench. Around the world, Putin is getting in a rough place. He is now mobilizing 300,000 troops, I think, to send to the war in Ukraine as thousands flee Russia and protest in the streets to avoid the draft. And a lot of activity going on in Iran, a lot of fighting in the streets. Women are rising up to fight oppression. Okay, that's it for the little news shorts and a little bit of banter. I hope you're having a good morning or good whatever it is, wherever you're listening to this, whether it be on Loyola, WLUW 887, WLUW.org on Saturdays, or of course, youtube.com/Heartland Media anytime, and also on CAN TV, Google, and Spotify podcasts. Okay, we'll take a little break, get your coffee, hit the bathroom, whatever you got to do. We'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Here with more Live from the Heartland. It gives me a great pleasure to bring on my pal Steve Yellen down there in El Paso. He was on recently with Basketball in the Barrio. He did play at UTEP. He is the color announcer for the UTEP games. He's the founder of Basketball in the Barrio, the president of Athletes United for Peace, and a guy with an acute eye and openness, sensitivity to finding out what's going on. He loves El Paso. I was just down there with him for few days when we went for the Bobby Bird Memorial, and we got to ride around. We got to see long lines of people getting food. We talked a lot of politics, and then I'm watching the news yesterday, and all of a sudden comes on that El Paso, with a Democratic mayor, clearly a Democratic city, is also sending migrants to other places. In this case, I believe New York and Chicago. So what's different, Steve, about the way your mayor is sending buses off, and the way that your governor has been using people kind of as pawns?
Yes, that's a very good question, Michael James. First off, thank you for having me on your Heartland show. I'm honored to speak with your fellow Heartlanders and, well, folks all over the country. I've noticed over the last few years, you have gained a listenership really that transcends the borders of the Heartland. So especially out here on the border.
Coming along.
Yeah, you've been a great friend of the border, and thank you for educating folks. Oscar Leeser, our mayor, has been really nothing short of remarkable, I think, the last few weeks. What people don't understand, though, I think, about what's going on the borders. How about this? How about I throw a little trivia question at you? Over the last 3 months, have the migrants from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras increased or decreased the last 90 days?
I think they probably have decreased because the volume of, no, they've increased. You tell me.
Well, everybody would think, I mean, it was a trick question. I said the other day to somebody that asked me that question, I said, well, what do you mean? Right? They're increasing. I mean, there's thousands every day. They're literally a couple of football fields from my home, as you know. But Michael, that's why there's so many things on the board. They're so hard to understand and connect the dots. They have decreased. They have decreased for the first time since the pandemic, really. They have decreased, those three countries. But what's happened is Venezuela has increased dramatically because, just the just cause theory, just cause things are not going well in Venezuela. And they've gone from, and the reason I know these numbers is because I happen to be on the board of, it's a United Way board that really stems from the US government, which gives money to every city in the country, called Emergency Food and Shelter. EFSP, Emergency Food and Shelter Program. And I happen to be on this little board with 12 of us, and we divvy out the money to the shelters here in El Paso once a year. It's a few $1,000,000 for a city like ours. But recently, over the last few weeks now, Congress has given us $47 million, which has come to the county of El Paso. It's a lot of money now to render aid to the migrants. Now, where are they from? They're not from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, which is the usual for El Paso, okay? But they have actually, I don't know why they've decreased, but Venezuela has been unbelievable. It's gone from 6,000 3 months ago, 17,000 last month, Michael, 25,000 this month, and they're talking about October. They approximate it to be about 50,000. Can you believe it? It's a geometric progression, all right? Not arithmetic. All right. So this is pretty amazing what's happening on the border now. Your question, how has Oscar Leeser, the mayor, been different? He's been wonderful. He's gotten the chief of police. He's got the folks at CBP, the Custom Border Protection Organization, as you know, a U.S. government agency, and ICE, right? The folks come across the border. These are all legal, by the way. I want you to know that's what's changed from Trump to Biden. Before, a couple of years ago now, when President Trump was in charge, he would send back the asylum seekers, which was very odd. We thought here, that's not, I mean, it's part of our, the law is to allow asylum seekers to seek a better life, escaping political persecution or whatever, the danger of their families that have been put in. So what's happened now, though, is Venezuela's in such a hard situation. Again, these numbers, I only know them because of this little committee I'm on, this little board I'm on. Venezuela, they measure the poverty in two ways. Poverty, where you're still making it on your own, but you live with very low income, and then extreme poverty, where the government has to help you. All right, so check these numbers out. Poverty from 2006 in Venezuela has gone from 34% to 96% of the population. Wow. Extreme poverty, where you need the help, can't survive on your own without help from the government, has gone from 06 now, this last, 17 years, has gone from 9% to 76%. So they're all, in the recent months, the last 90 days, they've made their way, again, from 6,000 to 50,000 next month. So Oscar Leeser, the mayor, is working with the chief of police, with all our shelters, with the county. Again, we've just received $47 million to create a new processing center, make sure they're fed. There's three problems. I'm sorry, I'm going on and on here.
No, it's good. It's good information.
It's amazing. They need three things, right? Shelter, meals, and transportation. These asylum seekers from Venezuela already pretty much know where they want to go. They have a cousin, a friend, a sponsor, somebody in New York, maybe in Chicago. And we will only send them, our mayor will only send them, and has only sent them to where they want to go. Oh, I'd like to go to my cousin Michael James in Chicago. And we put them on a bus and we send them to Chicago or New York or wherever. The whole Martha's Vineyard story was totally different. All right. The governor of Florida just basically, all right, said, you're going to Martha's Vineyard. There was no sponsor there or connection there. So that's a big difference. Governor Abbott, I'm not sure. I really shouldn't speak to this because I'm not an expert. But again, I only know these things because I'm on this board that divvies out the money. And so I meet all the the wonderful nonprofit people that take care of the migrants when they cross the border. Our city has been amazing. In the first few days, we had tents. The reason we had tents is because the wonderful folks from Dick's Sporting Goods gave out the tents. Unbelievably, like community first thinking company. All right. And help people get meals and sleep. And then we quickly went to work and got them to shelters. But the shelters have been, there's a lot of strain. It's overwhelming the community shelters here. That's why we look to get them to their sponsors in other cities. So in a nutshell, that's what's been happening. The Venezuelans, and it's not going to stop. We're talking about another 25,000 people coming in the next few weeks.
Well, that's a lot of information, Steve. I know that one of the things that keeps you motivated is your wife, Tracy, and she's pretty active in border work. Is she involved at all in any of this stuff with immigrants?
Tracy is the CEO of the Paso del Norte Community Foundation, and it helps nonprofits of all types, right? Big emphasis on healthcare. She is so busy. I'm not sure how to answer your question. I'd have to probably call her secretary and get an appointment to be able to talk to Tracy to find out how she's involved and what she's doing. She's amazing. But yeah, she is a main cog in much of the nonprofit work that goes on here on the border. And she handles maybe, one of the second or third largest pots of money, here on the border.
Yeah.
But specifically, I'm just not sure, Michael.
No, that's good. I don't need to know anymore. I know she's doing great work, as do you. Why don't you give us a little update on your take? We got a couple of minutes left on your take on how the Beto campaign is going. He's a good friend of yours. We had him on the show here through you. And last time I was down there, you and I went around getting pictures of you and various workers all cheering on Beto. Well, how's it looking down there for this election?
Michael James, listen, the most important thing in sport, in life, in everything you do, I think Red Holzman, the old coach of the New York Knicks, used to say the greatest player on the court is a 6'11" first-round draft choice named Momentum. And I always love that quote because momentum is everything. You feel the energy and people want to hop on that train. And Beto right now has unbelievable momentum. He sells out gymnasiums with 2,000 people, auditoriums with 1,000, 2,000 people. You've seen that. You've been involved with political campaigns a long time, Michael, and you'd love it if 20 of your friends showed up to hear you speak at, the local alderman or even governor races and senator races. But Beto's selling out these auditoriums and gyms across. He works so hard, and boy, I tell you, he lost to Senator Cruz by 1% of the vote. And I think the difference this time is that we've signed up so many more new voters, about 7 million. Okay, so I've just run I'm a math guy, I'm a numbers guy, as you know. If you run the calculations, there's 7 million new voters in this great state of Texas. And Beto is really doing a good job recruiting them, wooing them. And he's just such a bright, smart, wonderful young man. I think he's got both parties that are really interested in supporting him. I think the momentum is so great. I think it will sweep him to victory in November. Really do. Most of the polls you see are 5% down from Abbott, 5 to 7%. Okay, fine. Who are they calling? How do you do a poll? You call people that have voted. You don't call the 23-year-old kid that just graduated from college who's a newly recruited voter, right? So I think this poll specifically is really going to be incorrect. So I'm excited about that. So.
Well, this is great, Steve. I'm glad you filled us in not only on Beto's chances, but also on what's going on with immigration. And if we had more time, I'd get you to do a report on the recent basketball in the barrio, but we're going to save that because you are a good guest. And I'm really glad that you got up early, as you always do, though, I know. and you've talked to all of the listeners of the Live from the Heartland show. Keep
Michael,
up your
thank
good
you.
work.
No, thank you for being such a great friend to the border. I think it's important because our demographic. It's really we've been a kind of a crucible of study, the border, El Paso specifically, because we are what this country and your city will look like 20 or 30 years from now. So it's very important. So thank you for your connection to the border, Michael.
Okay, brother, and all you listeners and viewers, however you're getting the show, we'll be right back with our next guest. We're going to start talking organic food. We're back for our second guest here on Live from the Heartland for the week of September 24th. And I'm really happy to bring on someone named Kevin Erickson, who I learned about from Katie Hogan, our co-producer, sometimes co-host. And she said, they've got a whole lot of agricultural stuff going on over there at Loyola, and you may want to have this fellow on. And having been a member of the 4-H club, a head, heart, hand, and health guy, and always liked agriculture and still do, I'm really looking forward to this interview. So good morning to you, Kevin.
Good morning, Michael. Thanks for having me on today.
Good. So tell us a little bit about what you got going on over there. I drive by Loyola. I used to run through there, walk through there. Pretty much it's now driving around. I don't see any fields of growing corn or, hemp plants or whatever, but I know you got something happening. How about sharing that with our listeners and our viewers?
Sure. Thanks for asking. So we are obviously situated in an urban area of Chicago. And so our main campus, which is the Lakeshore campus, houses a large greenhouse, as well as an urban garden or a plot, which is about the footprint of a typical city lot. And so we don't have a lot of space, maybe compared to, suburban or rural areas. But the program allows us to hone in on a few methods and practices that are unique to a lot of urban agriculture. And those things would include hydroponics or aquaponics. We also do mushroom production. We have outdoor production of crops in our garden. And then we also sell everything at a local farmers market, being the Glenwood Sunday Market, locally here in Rogers Park every Sunday. And we've also run the Loyola Farmers Market, which is our own campus farmers market that we're hoping to bring back. So it's a very diverse type of experience that we're offering for students, and also noting that students want an experience outside of the classroom. They're begging to get outside and get their hands dirty and do real work. And so I think what's unique about this program is that we're providing somewhat of a real experience for them to actually engage in production and sell it to the community and get that validation and sort of feedback from customers. And it's a very holistic experience so that students can sort of learn the process from seed saving all the way to seeding and transplanting to planning out the year with the crops and successions and the harvests and projections, all the way to selling it and maintaining restaurant relationships and customer relationships. And we're also foodies. We have to be able to describe great recipes for eating turnips if we want to be successful in selling turnips. And I can tell you right now, we sell a special variety of turnip called Hakurai, which is my absolute favorite. It's a really sweet, crunchy, great turnip, and we harvest them a little smaller, so they're a little more tender. But it's these types of conversations that we have to have with customers to help them understand seasonality, but also diversifying their palate a little more than what we might find in typical grocery stores. So
I'm glad you brought up the turnips, because I'm a root vegetable guy. And back in the day when we founded and ran the Heartland Cafe for 36 years, I always wanted to develop a root vegetable hash. And so turnips was something we really liked. Beets we like, and parsnips. I just going to throw in here in terms of recipes. If you take a little bit of parsnip and mix it with your mashed potatoes, all mashed up, it really tops it off. It's great.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, Kevin Erickson, how long has this program at Loyola been going? I didn't really know about it. I like to think I know a lot of what's going on, but this was great news to hear about this program. How long you been doing it?
Sure, the program's been in existence for about 10 years. And that has aligned with the time that we opened the Institute of Environmental Sustainability at Loyola University. So this is a specific department of the university that houses environmental science students and faculty. And so we offer an array of majors in environmental science, environmental studies, and even food systems and sustainable agriculture is one of those majors. So we have now blossomed a little bit, and we are now the School of Environmental Sustainability, which we have now added a graduate program. So that has really expanded our research capabilities, as well as publications and a lot of high-level research coming out of our department or now our school. So that's been an exciting area of growth for us.
How did you get involved in agriculture?
Good question. I got involved in agriculture first as an eater. I think, attending farmers markets while I was in college, and I think seeking out food, organic food or food that was grown locally was something, when I was in college, that it wasn't something you'd find in a grocery store. Now we probably take for granted the fact that a lot of grocery stores have organic sections. That wasn't always the case for consumers 10, 15, 20 years back. And so I befriended the farmers that I was buying produce from, and they invited me to come work on the farm for a day as a volunteer. And I didn't know what I was getting into, but I ended up working for a day and discovered that there were young people doing this work, which kind of blew my mind. My impression up until that point was that farming was done by, mostly older white guys on tractors. And so this was a real eye-opening experience to see younger folks who were really motivated and hopeful about, changing the agriculture scene in a way that was more conducive to long-term success or sustainability. And so I think also combined with the fact that, I grew up in mostly in a suburban environment, not around a lot of agriculture, and I felt a yearning for learning how to take care of myself. And so that could be fixing things, or that could be growing my own food or cooking for myself. I think a lot of young people feel this yearning for that sort of knowledge. And whether it applies in a career application or not, I think people are seeking the knowledge to take care of themselves and each other in a way that we don't have to depend on a huge service economy for everything to be done for us. So I think that was also maybe a deeper level of seeking something out that really aligns with, the human perspective. What does it really mean to be a human being? And food is just a really important aspect of that.
Kevin, how many students do you have? I mean, how many graduate students do you have, and how many classes are running with just undergraduates taking a class in agriculture?
Sure. So we are offering sustainable agriculture, agroecology. We offer a class called Solutions to Environmental Problems, which is done in the foods sort of arena. And then students can also do an internship for credit in the urban agriculture program, where they can receive course credit for engaging in an internship, which is mostly hands-on type of work. Our graduate program started about 5 years ago, and I think we're around maybe 100 students at the moment, so we're growing. And so I think we're at the moment I'm working with about 5 graduate students in my program, and about 60 total students that work in the urban agriculture program over a span of a year. And that's broken down into semesters, where we have a group of about 20 students per semester. And the interns get to rotate through all the aspects of the program. So they get to try hydroponics, aquaponics, mushroom production, selling at a farmer's market, harvesting and growing in an outdoor environment, all within a span of 1 semester. So it's a really diverse experience for them.
Well, this sounds like a great program. Are there other similar programs to this at other universities around the country? Are we in the vanguard here in Loyola at Rogers Park?
Um, yeah, yes and no. I would say there are some programs around the country. I don't know of many programs that offer quite a unique sort of diverse experience in one semester working with teams. Kansas State, for example, has an urban agriculture program with graduate students. I'm not aware of programs similar to us in the state of Illinois, so I think that's something that really sets us apart. And especially being in Chicago, which is a wonderful city for urban agriculture. I've been fortunate enough to be in the city for about 15 years, watching the development of Chicago urban agriculture grow from a few plots to large community gardens to seeing the farmers market scene really expand across Chicago, where we now have over 50 markets offered across the city. It's been amazing to sort of see the movement and activity and support for this type of work.
I've got another guest going to come on who's also an organic guy, Ed Kugler. I don't know if you guys know each other, but he's like kind of a pioneer. But before I go to him, I know you did your graduate work in cannabis, and being an aficionado of cannabis, and on this show, we often do what we call the reefer report. Tell us about what getting a study in cannabis was like, and how your degree in cannabis affected, or how it ended up. How'd you end up with it?
Sure. Well, it was an interesting process. Obviously, it was the first time that any cannabis had been grown on this campus, and
That you knew of.
right. Well, it's true. It's true. Officially. And so, there were some unique sort of conversations that had to be had with administrators to make sure that this could be done safely and appropriately. And so we actually chose to grow industrial hemp instead of psychoactive cannabis, and mainly for the safety reason. Also, the cost of permits is very different with industrial hemp. So the purpose of this study was actually to grow hemp for flower production in highly contaminated soils with lead. And uniquely, these soils were from Chicago, from someone's backyard, as opposed to taking soil and just adding lead to it to artificially spike it. So it was sort of lead in high levels, but levels that we would find in Chicago. And at 2 really high levels of lead, I measured the uptake of lead into the flower material and other parts of the plant. And I use phosphorus as a way to mitigate uptake or reduce uptake into the plant. So my sort of theory was that we can produce hemp flower in these highly contaminated soils, potentially with the right amendments that could limit the ability for lead to actually move through the plant structure and be a contaminant. And so also along with those lines, I studied the variation of the cannabinoids that occur in the flower material at different heights. And this was sort of a novel study that hadn't been looked at in this sort of way. And the variations that we found across the plant height was very interesting. And I don't think that's something that's quite illuminated in the industry at this point, to where there are significant value components to the cannabinoids based on different heights. And that's certainly what we found in our case in this experiment.
Well, Kevin, this has been great. I'm going to go look for my old poster that says "Grow Hemp for the War" from the Second World War. I think it's a reprint, but I'm looking forward to meeting you in person and having more discussion. And anytime you want to come on and give us a mushroom report, beet report, parsnips, turnips, the whole deal, you're welcome back.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It was great chatting with you today.
All right, everybody stay tuned. We're going to take a very short musical break, and we'll be back with more live from the Heartland with a pioneer from the organic food movement here in Chicago, Ed Kugler. Be right back here on the left end of your dial, or however you're getting the show. While we did talk about the border, then we moved on to Loyola's organic farming program. And now it really brings me great pleasure to bring on someone I've known for, since probably 1976 or so.
Yep.
1977, one of the pioneers of the organic food movement here in Chicago, the one, the only Ed Kugler. And good morning to you, Ed.
Hey, good morning to you, Michael. It's very nice that I can have this opportunity to chat after all these years of not seeing you and talking to you.
Yeah, well, it's been a number of years since we sold the Heartland, and then it's no more. But the spirit of it all goes way back, and you were a key figure in our lives. I had
a sprout farmer.
What's that?
I was the sprout farmer for the Heartland Cafe for a period of time when I was from 78 to 81 is when I grew my sprouts.
Yeah, we did. And I probably have some pictures of me and your sprouts somewhere, but we did a lot of mung sprouts, a lot of alfalfa sprouts. And, it was a new thing. I didn't grow up eating them except once in a while at a Chinese restaurant in my hometown. But you've been around a good amount of time promoting organics.
Yes.
And and I was looking up some information today and remembering Rodale and Rodale Pressed and Rudolf Steiner and the organic food movement. How about you share a little bit about your journey through plants and food and what you're doing these days? Because I know you are involved with an organic teaching garden at a suburban high school.
Well, not at the high school. The kids actually come to my house. And for 12 years, the environmental science classes, whether it be the AP section or the regular class, which were mainly seniors. So roughly 200 kids per year, except for the COVID years, which have been the last three. So the garden has been planted by me the last 3 years, where the process was that the kids would come in the fall, and a class just left this morning. And
What school?
This is the Highland Park High School. Okay, Mr. Hill's class. Mrs. Hill was here first, and then Mrs. Peterson's class. So I've had 5 classes here. And then across the street, roughly, is a Montessori school that 60 little 3 to 6-year-olds came over with their teachers and supervisors and walked the garden. The premise of the garden, as I told all the kids, is that I'm a proponent of an edible garden versus the ornamental gardens that everybody sort of gets used to seeing it around homes and etc. So here, mine's the extreme. The entire landscape is a garden. I've got over 100 raised beds. I've got apple tree, an Asian pear tree, a Honeycrisp apple tree, 2 donut peach trees, and there's a crab apple tree, because the front yard's a landscape that was designed by my partner, Robert Boyce from Natural Environments, in which we did a native prairie design for the front, and the whole backyard and the driveway grows food, vegetables. And so the kids come here in the fall to taste and sample. The old method was the previous year's planting, but because it was me planting, that's what they ate this year. But the sequence is the kids come and taste and experience what it is to see how a garden grows. And then in the February to March time, we go in the school, plant seedling plants, and then they come out in May, and then they plant. And so in one day, my whole house gets planted by 200 kids roughly. So that's how easy it used to be. And so that's the exciting thing, is the kids, are roughly 25 in a class, and about a handful are always the ones that raise their hand that they have a garden in the backyard. So I know I'm giving a kickstart to the messaging of how simple it is to plant food by a seed, soil, and water and sunlight, and voila, you got something that you can eat. And so that's my messaging to the kids every year, is how important it is to take it upon yourself to grow things organically. And it's not that difficult. And the example is my whole yard. I tell them, this is me, with your helping hands, but this is not my full-time job. So it's not that difficult if you got the mindset to plant and eat food that you grow.
Well, I've known you since like 77, 78, and I know you were an advocate, a strong advocate about organic food, and your wife, I don't know if it's your current wife or back then, I think she was involved in getting organic food into Jewel stores. Um, and I was not a big, it took me a while to learn, to be honest with you. My thing with the Heartland was we're doing beans and rice, it's organic rice. I wasn't as concerned about organic because of price. I was more into fresh, but I stood corrected over time that the organic movement was really more than price. It was really about health, the planet, etc. How about giving us a little picture of how you've seen organic food grow over the last, close to 50 years now? Because you've been
Well,
involved in every step of the way here in
I will
Chicago.
give you the quick version of my life.
Good.
Basically, I went to Michigan State in 70 to 72 and learned from the hotel restaurant school there that taste and looks were very important. Off campus at the vegetarian restaurants, the natural food co-ops, etc., I was learning you are what you eat and you should care about the planet. I came home from college and my folks couldn't believe I became vegetarian and I cared more about the planet than I did about how good the food they were eating impressed me. So I stood out then. So that's 1971. I haven't changed my philosophy in that I began to travel around the country in 76. I went to festivals, fairs, seminars, farms, stores, coast to coast. I spent a month traveling and self-educated myself. I saw Buckminster Fuller. I saw Frank Ford, the innovator of Arrowhead Mills. Al Jacobson, the innovator of Garden of Eden chips. I met all the original people that were out there, and I still go to trade shows every year. I'm on my way next week to go to the Philadelphia East Coast Natural Food Trade Show. I pride myself that I probably have gone to more trade shows in the food since 1976. I've been going to natural food trade shows, and being a person that walks and talks the messaging of trying to get the word of organic and natural out to the public. I created taste-a-thons coast to coast. And I used to, for over 5 years, travel around the country doing 15 to 20 events promoting natural food product line that I'd be giving away. I was an innovator backstage to Farm Aid in 1997. They came to Chicago unexpected. I helped coordinate for the caterer catering for the 4 days over $10,000 worth of organic natural food so that the caterer could prepare this one-of-a-kind meal for all the people showing up for the concert in Tinley Park in 97. And from that day forward, they changed their whole strategy as far as the messaging. They saw the organic food pavilion that I created backstage that Neil Young actually mentioned on stage at one moment to emphasize the importance that you have to have a cause, as Neil Young said in life, and he saw the generation that he was talking to back then as not really having a cause anymore. So he was stressing the organic messaging at that particular concert because I had brought it to their back door, and they have continued and grown. And my ex-wife, Sonia, as you mentioned, she still works with Farm Aid and procures and has created this homegrown festival component to Farm Aid. And they've actually changed the venues at major stadiums where they've been, where they now offer organic natural things when they've have done things that Super Bowl actually had one time, local stuff because of their efforting. So it's a neat message. Where I'm headed today is still The industry is, still unknown as far as I'm concerned, because people have that it costs too much to eat organic. But even back in 1971, when I switched my diet, I said to my father, the money that you give me, I'm investing it in the future of the planet, because I'm spending it towards the things that help the planet. And so that's pretty much been the basis that I'm going to wrap up with, that how it all ties together, that when you spend your dollar every day towards anything organic, that pipeline goes to support that industry. When you go to spend the dollar towards the Twinkie or the Coca-Cola, you're shifting your money to those industries. All right. So the messaging that I always try to pass on is your dollar really has an effect. And if you change how you spend your money and how you think about the food that you put in your mouth as an important ingredient to stay out of the hospital, okay, because my little pitch is, if you were to poll the people in hospitals what their diet is, I guarantee you it will show that they don't eat organic or they're vegetarian that often, okay? And so those facts are true. It's hard to convince a public that's not educated yet. And that's my one thing, that the educational system needs to change, because kids are not being taught to survive anymore. They're taught education, okay? And I think it should be more, they should be taught how to grow food, how they know medical stuff, all these little things, because the parents are so busy. There's no education. Like in the old days, the parents told you what to do. Today, the parents don't have time to tell the kids what to do.
Well, you know what? Speaking of education, one thing that I got educated around was reading Paul Bragg. And I'm wondering, of all the people you meet, did you ever meet him? Probably not.
No, I've met his daughter. She's been a showpiece at the trade shows for as many years as she's been out there, but I don't think she attends anymore.
People may know Paul Bragg from the apple cider vinegar.
Yes,
that's their biggest product, I think.
And Dr. Bronner's, both those guys were the pioneers of the simple but formulas of health. Okay, and that's the thing that's so overlooked. And even to this day, doctors do not need to have any education in nutrition. Okay, which is a shame, because doctors should be covering their bases by telling people what they should be eating, as well as the pills they are taking.
Well, okay? I think there's a shift with some of them, but
yeah,
that's good. Now, you also are involved in doing farmers markets still, or?
Yes, I've innovated myself. Well, the thing that I can boast is that in 1978, when I was a sprout farmer at the Ravinia Farmers Market here locally where I live, I grew 10 varieties of sprouts, and that's sort of when we had the Heartland Cafe and the Blind Faith Cafe, and any natural place. I was the supplier of sprouts at that particular time. For a 3-year pitch, I was in most of the stores in the area or restaurants that wanted it. And today, or 6 years ago, I became the manager of the Ravinia Farmers Market. So I am the only manager vendor in 45 years that have gone. Next year is the 45th anniversary. So I'm going to be PRing myself boastfully as being the one and only. And I will bring sprouts back next year. And this year I'm bringing back my bakery line that I used to do 44 years ago. My oatmeal raisin cookies, and I've developed something called the organic fruit pizza, where I've combined a whole wheat crust from a farmer out of Capron, Illinois, that grows the wheat and then bakes and makes a crust, because when they go out to the markets in Kenosha and Woodstock, they also have like 12 different varieties of bread. So they really, a number of other items, but I get the crust from him. And at Arlington Heights, There's another farmer there that he grows the only organic fruit and vegetables that you'll find in one stand anywhere in this area. And so I use his peaches, his blueberries, his raspberries, whatever fruit he's got. I put that as my topping with a little maple syrup, and voila, I got the only organic fruit pizza in town.
Well, I'm looking forward to checking you out more closely and to eating those oatmeal cookies. I do my oatmeal with blueberries and maple syrup and a hit of sometimes a little hit of butter, I admit, pretty much every morning. And I do see online, it says if you eat oatmeal every day, this is what it does. I don't know if it's good or bad. I haven't looked any further, but I'm a big oatmeal fan.
All right. Well,
all
good.
right, Ed Kugler, you are a hell of a guy, and I really appreciate all the work that you've done and all the work that you're doing. And let's give a shout out to Kay Stepkin from the Bread Shop and Mickey Hornick from the Chicago Diner. There were a whole bunch of you people who along with all of us at the Heartland, who really carved out some stuff in this town and are all doing good in the world still, I assume.
And the way anybody can find me is EddieKugler.com.
EddieKugler.com. I like it. I'm going to go look at you up after the show. All right, brother.
All right. It's going to be remodeled within another week. It will change up. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
You've been listening
Thank
to
you very much, Michael.
Show. And we are brought to you every Saturday morning over WLUW 88.7 as well as WLUW.org. So we're aired and streamed, and you can get us anytime at youtube.com/heartlandmedia/videos. And so you can get that and send it around to your friends. And we'll be back next week. And I want to thank everybody who makes this show possible. Emilio Davis, Katie Hogan, Tom Clark, Monty Warren over at Loyola, and a whole lot of other people influence us and talk to us. So do good in the world. The world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Have a great week. See you next week.